Good morning, good afternoon, wherever part of the world you are at today. So me and Josh are right here in Henderson, Nevada in our lab. My name is Becky Hall. I am a founder, director of education here. And this is Dr. Josh Bondi.
I'm Dr. Josh Bondi. I'm also a co-founder of the Nevada Science Center, and I'm the director of research. So make sure that all the original research that's done through our program is taken care of. And it is our pleasure today to introduce one of our friends and colleagues, Dr. Bernard Means of the Virtual Curation Lab at Virginia Commonwealth University. So he's an archaeologist by training, and he's using really cool, modern, futuristic technology to better understand our past from around the world. Before he gets started though, and I hope he talks about it more, if you're an educator, he has a fantastic Sketchfab account. So Bernard, you better talk about it, where he has free downloads if you're an educator for, if you need artifacts, fossils, anything like that. So check that out. So with that, I'll kick it to Dr. Means at the Virtual Curation Lab, and we get to see some of his cool work that he's doing preserving our past.
And stick around for the Q&A at the end, and you can ask Dr. Means or Dr. Bondi any of your questions from the presentation. All right, hit it, Bernard.
All right, so I'm Bernard Means. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes, sir, you're good. Go ahead.
Awesome. I have to talk through a mask because we are following COVID protections in our lab. So I'm a director of the Virtual Curation Laboratory, and we do a lot of 3D scanning and a lot of 3D printing in our lab. And so I'm going to actually show you our 3D scanner first, and then our 3D printer, talk a little bit about the process, and then I'm going to show you some of the replicas that we've created. So Mason, if you can come with me. Very steady. So this is our 3D scanner, and if you could come around this way a little bit, Mason. It uses lasers, and the lasers come out of the scanner and they hit the object, and you can see the lasers, hopefully, in the photo. And then the scanner records them. And once we do that, we have a 3D model. So a 3D model, that's what's on here. And so this is in the process of being scanned, and we'll be able to take this and take it to our 3D printer. So Mason, we're going to go over to the 3D printer now. That's Alex. And so, the 3D printer uses plastic to build a 3D model from the 3D scan. And what I'm printing right here was this whale vertebra that actually Mason 3D scanned, was that yesterday? Mm-hmm. Yesterday. So she 3D scanned it yesterday. And I 3D printed it, but I made it smaller so it could get done in time for this. So this is a 3D printed replica. And then, and so that's a lot of what we do in the lab. And I'm going to go over and take you to some of the replicas we have. So I am an archaeologist, so a lot of what I do is related to archaeology. One of the things that I'll show you, this is the skull of a mummy from ancient Egypt that was actually wrapped in mummy wrappings, and they were able to build a digital model from it. And we have a recreation that Mason actually made for us using digital software. So that's one of our mummies. And then over here, I have another mummy. This is a mummified bird. So, the ancient Egyptians mummified all kinds of things. So we have a mummified bird. We have a mummified cat. And then we have a mummified baby crocodile. And so as archaeologists, we work with animal remains. We work with things made out of clay. We work with things made out of stone. So I'll show you. This is a dog burial. So this is actually from an American Indian site in Maryland, which is just north of Virginia. And it dates to about 800 years ago. So somebody buried their dog. And we have other American Indian artifacts. This one is a little clay pot from Pennsylvania. And also, I do a lot of work in Pennsylvania. So this is also a clay pot from Pennsylvania. So what we do is we 3D scan all of this stuff and 3D print it. And then we give it to museums, and some of them go on exhibit. Some of them are used by teachers. Some of them are things, if you have a 3D printer in your home or in your school, you can print yourself. Some of these things are important to our American history, so people come to us and ask us to print stuff. So this is a torch from a British ship that was sunk in the very last battle of the American Revolution. So this was recovered from off the coast of Virginia. And then we have, we also work with a period related to the Constitution. So this is a key to Independence Hall in Philadelphia. So this would have been an original key to one of the locks in Philadelphia. And we've been working with the National Park Service in Philadelphia for a number of years. And so they've done a lot of archaeology from the time period related to the writing of the Constitution. So this is a little jar. It's a base was broken, so a little bit's broken off of it. And each one of these would have had a flower petal in it. So this would have been in a kind of a fancy house. And then from here in Virginia, we have, some of you probably can figure out what this is. This is iron. This was used by somebody who was a slave, enslaved by somebody. And so they would have to work on the clothes for the people who had them enslaved. And then what else do we want to talk about? I also do a lot of work in North India. So if anybody's from India, I do work archaeology in India. And we've been helping them scan things like pottery. So this is a little piece of pottery from about 700 years ago. And then I have a little figurine. This is somebody, a little person riding an elephant. And this is about 2,000 years old. So it's a much older object. Let's see. The nice thing about plastic is if you drop it, you don't have to worry too much about it. And then over the years, I've been working with a lot of museums, like with people like Josh and Becky. So we've started scanning stuff associated with different fossils. And I'll show you one of my favorite fossils. And you can actually download this fossil yourself. It's from Philadelphia. It's a mastodon tooth. And I'll show you what a mastodon is in a minute. But it belonged to Ben Franklin. So Ben Franklin collected this. And it was found by archaeologists working in Philadelphia. And this is a replica. The real one's in Philadelphia right now. So this is what a mastodon would have looked like. It's an elephant, or related to elephants. And it lived over 10,000 years ago. They lived all over the North America, the United States and Mexico and Canada. There's actually more than one species of these, but we don't worry about too much about that. And you might be more familiar with their cousin. Sorry, I lost my mammoth for a minute. Their cousin, which is the mammoth. So this is a mammoth. You can see that the mammoths and mastodons, they kind of look the same. They have trunks and tusks, but they also have very different sort of body builds. And they also have different shaped teeth. So this is a mastodon tooth, and it's kind of ridged, and so they would eat things like twigs and stuff. And then we have a mammoth tooth, and they're more flatter, and they would have eaten more sort of grassy type stuff. And then, so I've been working on a project associated with the founding fathers and different fossils that belong to them. And so I have here a giant ground sloth, and I'll show you a little recreation of a giant ground sloth. And this is a claw that somebody sent to Thomas Jefferson when he was vice president of the United States. And he became very, very interested in giant ground sloths. And this is kind of what they would have looked like. They look kind of like sort of chunky bears, but they stood about 10 feet tall. And this is the skull of a giant ground sloth. So this would have been its face, and you can see its mouth. And so you can imagine how big these were. And these also only ate plants. They didn't eat any. They didn't eat any meat. And then we'll go over here. We'll talk about some other large animals. And these actually lived millions of years ago. But this is an old whale that lived millions of years ago just off the coast of Virginia. And we actually 3D scanned this for a museum in California, the Western Science Center, so they could put it on exhibit. So it's actually in Washington, D.C. right now. We 3D scanned it, and they 3D printed their own copy. And then very recently, I showed you one whale vertebra. This is another one. This is a modern whale, but you can see how big. This is one of their backbones. And then through the years, we've also, even though I'm an archaeologist and dinosaurs are more what Josh and Becky do, I've done a lot of dinosaurs over the years. So one of the dinosaurs I've done is a Triceratops. We scanned a lot of bones of a Triceratops, different Triceratopses. So one of these is this beak. So this would be the lower beak of a Triceratops. And this is an adult. And then this is a juvenile Triceratops. And then we've done some Tyrannosaurus Rex as well. And so this is a Tyrannosaurus Rex tooth. At the very tip of it, they had big teeth. They're kind of like the size of bananas. And then we have a Triceratops poop. So this is poop from a Triceratops. And then we actually have a fossil that shows a Triceratops and a Tyrannosaurus Rex together. So this is one of the horns of a Triceratops. And it has, let's see, I've dropped this a couple of times, which is good that it's not a real fossil. This is a tooth mark right here in the tip. From a Triceratops. Let's see. And I'm going to take you over to Maggie real quick, because she's working on a comic book that we hope to make available to educators. So this is Maggie.
Hello.
And you'll have to speak loud.
Okay.
So Maggie is working on a comic book. Can you hold up the page you're working on? Can you see it? Okay?
I can bring it up.
And we'll point at the pages on the wall too.
So I'm working on a page right now about one of the first museums that focused on paleontology.
Yeah. So this is a museum that was in Philadelphia. And it was the first public museum in the early 1800s. And they had on exhibit a mastodon and also other fossils as well. And so she's making a comic book so we can tell more of the story. And then if you want to just show one of the pages on the wall. So we printed it really big to make it easier to see.
The real books will be a little smaller.
Yeah, the real comic book will be normal comic book size. Shall we go into the, go back over this way?
We shall.
Mason's going to follow me. And I should show you some of the boxes we have. So this is, any museum has to have collections. And so this is some of the stuff that we've collected over the years. So I'll show you the inside of one of our boxes. So this is stuff from Philadelphia. Everything's in bags though, of course. So I didn't think this part through. So this is one of the objects that we've 3D scanned. This dates to the 1780s and it belonged to somebody from Germany. And it was made in Germany. And they came over here, so. All right, so we'll go back this way. So I'm going to go over here and show you this next. So if you follow like forensic anthropology or like shows like Bones or something like that, people do facial reconstructions. And so this is a 3D scanned human skull, and then we worked on making a reconstruction of what the person would have looked like. And this is something that is done by archaeologists, and it's also done by people like who work for the police. I should have muted the phone. So, all right. So what else should we show them, Mason? Do we want to show them what you're working on in the other room?
Oh, gracious, we can.
We won't do that. Mason's not ready yet. So,
Hey, Bernard.
Yes.
Hey, can you tell us a little bit more about where you find these, or how do you scan these fossils and artifacts? Where do you have to go? And also, maybe your painting, like your painting process of why is some of your 3D prints different colors, and maybe show us what a raw one would look like off the printer versus how your artist would paint some of your artifacts there.
And I'll do that, and I'll actually take you in to show somebody who's painting right now. Usually what I do is I travel to museums. They'll invite me, and so I'll drive to the museums, or I'll take the train, or I'll fly. And the 3D scanners that I use are very portable, so I can even take them on the airplane with me. And so the museums invite me, I come and I work with them for a few days usually, and then I 3D scan the stuff, and then I put them online, and I make them available for other people to do with the museum's permission. And then we print a lot of things, because a lot of museums use 3D prints in their exhibits. So when you go to a museum today and you see like a fossil, especially the big stuff, they're not real fossils. They're replicas, and sometimes they're 3D printed. And the reason you use 3D printing is that the real fossil is kind of fragile. And so you don't want to use the real fossil because it could be damaged. And also sometimes you have to drill holes and things, you don't want to do that with the real fossil. So when we 3D print something, like this replica here, this is the color of the plastic doesn't matter too much, because we're going to paint it. And so I print it with whatever color of plastic I have available. And so in this one, you can see I use 3 different colors of plastic. And then once we have it, once we have the 3D print, then we can put paint on it. So we're going to go in here, and we'll have Sadie, who's working in the lab, and she's going to talk a little bit about 3D painting. Sadie wasn't sure that she was going to be on camera, and she is.
She didn't know at
Sadie, tell us what your kind of things that you've been painting.
So I paint
Yeah,
I paint bones. Some of them are human and some of them are animal.
So Sadie really likes to paint bone, and she's very good at it. Let's focus on the animal bone. So this is one she's in the process of painting. So the original color, I think it was green. And so she has different layers of paint. So what kind of colors of paint do you use?
So we base coat everything with this sort of tan color.
So this is the base we put down on top of the plastic. And depending on the color of plastic, you have to use more base coat. And so this is the first step. And then what color do you use next?
We use like this umber color that's a little bit red brown.
So yeah, so sort of reddish brown is next. And then do you use the blues and the greens, or mostly those two colors?
It's called Naples yellow for highlights.
So yeah, so she has a color called Naples yellow. So we actually, we make guides. Mason has made a lot of these that show you the different sort of combinations of paint that we put together, so that you can actually, if you can print it, you can paint it yourself. So, and let's go ahead and go over, and we're not gonna talk about these. And this is a bone. So if you know who Frederick Douglass is, famous abolitionist who escaped, he was enslaved and he escaped freedom. This is actually a bone from a steak that he would have eaten. So this was found by archaeologists at his house in Washington, D.C. And then we'll go over to here. And we'll talk about, I showed you that mastodon tooth earlier. This is one that Mason has started working on. And the first thing we do with some of these models that we want to look really, really accurate is we put a coat of this white stuff on it, kind of like this. So this has been started and it's been sort of covered. And then we paint on top of that. And that helps smooth out the different lines on the plastics. So I'm going to put that down, and of course I touched everything. And then we'll go over here and we'll show you how we use the 3D prints for like research and teaching. We'll go over to here. So as archaeologists, one of the things we do is we have to figure out what we find. And so we make like different examples of things like arrow points. So these are all different arrow points or spear points. When you're identifying animal bone, these are some of the animal bones that we might find and identify. And then we do things like identify different kinds of ceramics. So when you're learning how to do archaeology or learning how to do paleontology, you need a library of things. And that library has to be books, but the library also has to be 3D things that you can feel and see from all sides. And so that's a big part of why we do the 3D scanning and the 3D printing.
So Dr. Means, we have some student questions. Would it be okay if we asked some of them?
Yes.
The kids want to know, how long does it take you to print an item?
It depends on how big it is. So like a small item about this big will take about 3 hours or so. Something really, really big like this, which is multiple pieces, this took about 40 hours total to print. And the longest thing I printed was a really big ox skull for a museum. So it was like this. And that took 240 hours to print. So 10 days for the really big prints, but we did it in pieces. And like a human skull takes about 30 hours.
So the kids want to know, do you have any actual dinosaur fossils like there at your museum? And if so, how many do you have?
I do not have any real dinosaur fossils. So one of the things about our museum is we don't have a lot of real artifacts. Because we can't properly store them here. So we try not to have any real artifacts unless we're sort of 3D scanning them. But I can show you a real mummy we have.
Yeah, that would be sweet. But we do love all of the we have some more questions regarding 3D printing once you show us that.
Sure.
My walking is unsteady, I apologize.
This is our mummy. This is a baby possum. So it's only actually about 5 years old, and it died in somebody's garage, and they gave it to us. So we 3D scanned it. And this way I can tell people I have a mummy in the lab. But it's the only mummy we have right now. We did have a mummified lizard for a while that somebody loaned us. All right, 3D printing questions. I'm happy to answer them.
Yes, absolutely. They wanted to know, how do you get these files? When do they take photos of it and then you guys develop a 3D model and then it creates some type of file that you're able to print using a 3D printer?
So the way that the printers work, I have two different kinds of scanners. One uses lasers, and if you know about bats, how bats send sound waves out and the sound wave hits something and bounces back, and bats can see something in 3D. So we have a scanner that uses lasers that does that. It sends lasers out and it sees a 3D shape, and then it figures out and records the dimensions of that shape. And then we have another one that uses just patterns of light, and it does the same thing. So the light goes out and it hits the object, and then it bounces back, and however long that takes, it's able to make a 3D model. And then once we have that, we can send it to a 3D printer. So that's the main way that we do it. You can also use photographs. If you take lots and lots of pictures from different angles, computers can make it possible for you to make 3D that way.
They wanted to know, do you have any ongoing or potential projects for collection preservation in case of emergency disaster situations? They cite here the fire at the Brazil Natural History Museum. So do you guys do kind of like an insurance
then of course you can
policy
3D
for
print
the museums?
Sorry?
Is it kind of like, do you guys print some of these fossils and some of these artifacts, like just in case of any disasters that might occur at some of the museums, to where they have copies of them made in your possession?
That's very important. So the reason I'm working with a museum in North India is that they had a mudslide once that almost destroyed their museum. And so we're 3D scanning 3D files. Once you have them, you can just put them up in the cloud. And we have as Josh mentioned earlier, we have a Sketchfab site. So they're stored electronically, and then you can make a copy if you need one. So if something happens to the real fossil, then you can make a copy. Or if you're in a museum, you might store your stuff someplace very safely, very differently than where you are. And then the museum only has a copy. So the other stuff is protected somewhere else. And then if something happens, if there's a fire, or if somebody steals it, then you can just make another copy. But if that happened to the real thing, then it would be gone forever. So having the 3D model is really helpful for preserving and protecting and saving things.
So there was a question from one of our students. They want to know, what 3D software do you guys use for this?
So the scanners have their own software, but there is some free software you can use, and there's a program we use called Mesh, M-E-S-H, Mixer. It's all one word. And a lot of the editing we do after we get the 3D model, we do in Mesh Mixer. So if I want to sort of cut up an object so I can print it in different pieces, or if I, one of the things we do for museums is that you have like a right arm bone from an animal, and they need the left arm bone, so we can actually take the 3D scan and mirror it digitally, and then make the copy of the other side. And then we print that for the museum. And that way they can make an entire skeleton, even if they only have half of it.
That is incredibly interesting. And before we let you go, we have a couple more questions. What kind of education would a student need to get into? What specific area of study if they wanted to pursue your specific career path?
So I'm an archaeologist, so you would have to go to college and get a degree in probably anthropology, and then go to graduate school and at least get a master's degree. But one of the ways that's sort of really helpful, like in our lab here, is a teaching lab for students. So you find a place that has a teaching lab for students, and even as an undergraduate, you can get a lot of the sort of experience and skills you need. You can also, and I did this myself as an undergraduate, volunteer at museums that have the kind of stuff you're interested in. And if you're a paleontologist, you usually go to school for like geology or biology or something like that. And it's sort of the same kind of thing. You need the knowledge to understand what you find, but you also need the hands-on. So even if you can, even at a younger age, if you can find a museum or a program that allows you to get those skills, that's really helpful to help you. You basically kind of learn by doing. And so everybody that you saw today in the lab basically learned what they're doing by going to college, but also by doing it themselves.
That is sound advice. And we really appreciate your time today. And can you tell us a little bit about Virginia Commonwealth University and where you guys are located and all that? Because again, we have students all over the world here.
So Virginia Commonwealth University is in Richmond, Virginia, and that's on the eastern coast of the United States. We are a school of about 35,000 students. Most of them are undergraduate students, but we have graduate programs as well. And we are a research school, but we also do a lot of teaching of undergraduates. And we're a school that one of the things that we are pride ourselves on is helping students who are the first members of their families to go to college. And so VCU is, Virginia Commonwealth University is known for that within the state of Virginia.
Wonderful. And thank you again for your time. I'll go ahead and hand it on over to Dr. Bondi in Nevada at the Nevada Science Center. Dr. Bondi, if you want to tell the kids and the teachers a little bit about the Nevada Science Center and the website.
You bet. So you can reach the Nevada Science Center on their website at sciencecenternevada.org. Thank you so much, Dr. Means, for sharing your lab and your expertise with all of us this morning, this afternoon, wherever you're at in the world, as Becky said at the get-go. So again, the Nevada Science Center, we work closely with the Virtual Curation Lab to help preserve Nevada's past, whether it's artifacts that people might be working with or whether or not it's fossils that we're researching. So again, the Nevada Science Center is meant to be an educational resource across the state of Nevada and beyond. And we also conduct original research across the state and promote original research across the state. And again, you can see what we're up to by visiting our website, sciencecenternevada.org, or any of our social media platforms.
Well, thank you guys all for participating. Thank you everyone for joining us today. And we hope everyone is safe, healthy, and happy wherever you are. We hope to see you again. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.